been knew that was phony, I been knew that. Bitch, I see what lonely. See little pot of red gold. Talk 9-5 to the cold, bitch.
Yo, happy New Year's, everybody. Glad to see y'all in this new year. Hope y'all thrive for excellence with the second opportunity or another opportunity that was given to y'all. But no, today we're about to be reacting to why the kid LAROI disappeared from hip hop. From what I know, I think he just disappears to making country or just pop music. I don't know. I ain't heard the last song. I ain't heard song from him in so long, bro. It's been a minute. But let's see what happened to him, honestly. I'm genuinely
Now, a
curious.
few years ago, you might remember how there was a young rapper and singer who was catching a lot of buzz within the rap world. His name was the Kid LAROI, and a lot of his early success came from his connection to the late Juice WRLD. But here's the thing, after going...
Yeah, man, he was supposed to be Juice WRLD's protege. Then Juice WRLD died. His music took a whole left turn, you know what I'm saying? But I ain't...
had one of the biggest songs in the world with Justin Bieber. Something strange happened. Hip-hop stopped talking about him. He went from being Juice WRLD's protege in the rap scene to quietly shifting into the
You were hilarious, bro.
world where most hip-hop fans don't even check for him anymore. And that's what makes his story so interesting, because this isn't a case of someone falling off. On paper, LAROI is still massively successful, but his visibility in the culture he got his start in has faded. So, what really happened here? Let's talk about it together. Now, a lot of people recognize the face, the name, or both. The Kid LAROI, real name Charlton Howard, is a 22-year-old artist from Sydney, Australia. Music was always part of his...
I know he's breaking down his background, but hear me out. Do y'all think that he grifted or he used the hip-hop space like Post Malone used the hip-hop space and then just said, fuck y'all, I'm doing country? Hey, I think they're on the same
His
tip.
mom was a talent manager with deep ties in the Australian music scene, and his dad briefly pursued a recording career before moving into music engineering and production, working with acts like Bardet and Delta Goodrem. LAROI himself got into hip-hop at an early age, listening to everything from Tupac, Lil Wayne, and Kanye West. By the time he was just 10 years old, he had already decided he wanted to make music for a living. Now, his mom was his biggest supporter, and she not only played his music around the house, but even stayed up late with him trying to track down contact info for rappers in Australia. That kind of support gave him the confidence to chase a dream most kids his age would have thought was impossible. And before anybody really knew his name, LAROI was out there hustling. He would literally wait outside hotels for big artists who came through Sydney, trying to get a chance to play them his music. At one point, he even sent a friend to play one of his songs for Sway Lee, and it worked. They connected, built a relationship, and eventually ended up collaborating years later. At the same time, he was recording raps over beats on his mom's phone and posting them to SoundCloud. That grind led him to place third in the...
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 40...
2018 Unearthed High Competition, a contest for high school artists run by Triple J, one of Australia's biggest radio stations, and that moment gave him his first bit of national spotlight. And by 15, he had already caught the attention of Lil Bibby, who signed him to Grade A Productions in partnership with Columbia Records. Lil Bibby stated that it only took about 5 seconds for him to know LAROI was special, and even compared him to the first time he heard Juice WRLD's music.
I'm in the office with one of my homies, and they played me 5 seconds of this song of Kid LAROI. Once I heard that, I'm like, I need this kid. So once I heard him do that, and they say he's 15, I'm like I just knew.
15.
That same feeling of recognizing raw talent that
dumbass cat. But I think that's crazy to be looked at as 15 by like big record labels. That's definitely big. But comparing them to Juice WRLD ain't a bit of a stretch.
could be molded into something much bigger. And Grade A wasn't just any label. It was the same camp that discovered Juice WRLD. And Juice didn't just co-sign LAROI. He embraced him like a little brother, becoming a mentor for him during those crucial early years. And this is when things really started to take off, because that mentorship gave LAROI credibility and put him directly in front of Juice WRLD's rapidly growing audience in the rap world. However, when Juice WRLD tragically passed away in December 2019, LAROI not only lost a mentor, but also a big part of his identity in hip-hop. He dedicated songs to Juice and eventually appeared on the track Reminds Me of You. And around this time is when things got a little controversial.
That's literally probably the last song I heard about Kid LAROI, by the way. Do you know how long ago that dropped?
The record dropped on the 1-year anniversary of Juice's passing, and a lot of fans felt like the moment was being used to push LAROI forward instead of simply honoring Juice's legacy. And to them, it just didn't really feel organic. And while LAROI was only 17 years old at the time, the backlash he received was very strong. I said it back then and I'll say it again, I never blamed a 17-year-old kid for the timing a label chose. labels are always going to do what labels do, unless it's blatantly clear that someone's writing a legacy for clout. I think LAROI, at the time, considering his age, obviously deserved some grace. And I just want to emphasize, especially at that age, he was 17 years old, it's only fair. We all know how little control most young artists have over those kinds of decisions. If you hate the timing, 9 times out of 10, that's a corporate call. Now, this was the beginning of a bigger narrative forming around him. Some people saw him as Juice WRLD's natural prodigy, while others felt like he was being forced onto the culture.
See, me personally, around the time, I felt like him and Juice WRLD made good music. Like, they intertwined perfectly. But then, after Juice WRLD died, then Kid LAROI just disappeared.
The backlash, LAROI's career was moving very fast. His monthly listeners on Spotify skyrocketed to the point where he ended up surpassing Lil Uzi Vert. And then the conversation really exploded when people noticed that he had more monthly listeners than Kendrick Lamar himself, who at the time hadn't dropped a solo project in 4 years. And to me, that whole debate was kind of unnecessary because monthly listeners isn't a great way to measure loyalty. All it really shows is how many unique people streamed at least one of your songs in the last 28 days. If someone stumbles on your music in a playlist and never play it again, they still count. If your biggest fan listens to you 100 times that month, they still only count once. So it's really more about reach than anything else. And LAROI at that moment had massive reach. His songs were spiking everywhere, driving those numbers higher than any artist who hadn't released in years, Kendrick. So it's useful for showing how wide that net is, but it doesn't necessarily reflect a core fan base. For that, you obviously look at hard tickets. Who's showing up to your shows? And because LAROI blew up in quarantine, we didn't really have that data yet. Also, there's the novelty effect. New face, new voice, new story. The first 12 to 18 months of a hot rookie can outstream veterans who are between eras. Doesn't mean that the rookie is bigger in the long run. It just means that their name is hotter and more in circulation.
I mean, you see it every day or every season, every year. You know what I'm saying? You could take Ice Spice, for example. I feel like they probably went through the same thing. The only difference is his career is actually thriving while Ice Spice, I don't know what she got going on, doing sexy stuff for SpongeBob all type
at that time.
You know what I'm saying?
But Logic
Type
didn't
of
stop
weird
comparisons. People were
activities.
still shocked to see a teenager from Australia pulling in bigger numbers, streaming numbers, than icons like Kendrick. And that shock quickly turned into accusations. Was LAROI an industry plant? Was he being pushed by the machine? Or was he simply that hot? The division was obviously clear because on one side you had fans calling him the next big thing. On the other, people dismissed his rise as manufactured. And honestly, at that particular time, I can see why the industry plant accusations kept coming up. LAROI was rising so fast that to a lot of people, it almost didn't really look real. But in reality, that kind of momentum is exactly what happens when an artist hits the right moment with the right songs. On top of that, he was getting a heavy push from the industry, which only amplified the perception, right? But that push is also what introduced him to a wider audience, because many of the fans who ride for him today first discovered his name and face during that exact period where he was really exploding. Meanwhile, as the discourse was happening online, LAROI kept leveling up. He collaborated with Miley Cyrus, gained cosigns from Justin Bieber, who eventually later became his friend and mentor, and started making his way deeper into the pop world. At this point, he signed with Scooter Braun, one of the biggest managers in the music industry, and the longtime manager of Justin Bieber himself. Scooter's roster isn't small fish. I mean, we're talking about Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato.
Really?
From a business lens, this move made a lot of sense. Grade A helped break him, but Scooter's world is built to scale a pop act globally. So the tension was, could that machine move as fast as LAROI wanted with him in the driver's seat? Now, just 3 months later, LAROI left Scooter's camp. Reports said it was because Brown promised to be directly involved, but he wasn't. And LAROI also had issues with decisions being made without his input. He then moved on to work with talent manager Adam Leber, only to eventually return to Brown for a period of time. And
Dang. Hold on. Hey, let me get an ad block when I get monetized. Don't worry about it, y'all. But yeah, basically he thought the grass was green on the other side, and seeing that things wasn't going so well, so he went back home. It's okay, you know what I'm saying?
This behind-the-scenes chaos showed how messy the business side of things were for LAROI at the time, even while his popularity was skyrocketing.
No, you know what? This is the last song I heard by him. I forget.
And then came the song Stay. Now, This song
I
wasn't
need
just
you
a
to
hit, it was a
stay.
global smash.
Ooh.
Stay reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, #1 on the Global 200, and topped the charts in over 20 countries, including places like Germany, the Netherlands, and Sweden. It became LAROI's first #1 record, Bieber's 8, and one of the biggest records of the decade so far. Like, this song was huge. Some people might be like, what are you talking about, biggest songs of the decade? If you think you haven't heard the song, you've probably heard the song. That's how big it was.
Yeah, that's some good mall music, you know what I'm saying? Shopping music, grocery store music, you know.
Because there was a period of time where the song was quite literally
the radio played that song. It was so crazy. Yeah.
I vividly remember hearing it in malls, on the radio, in public spaces. I felt like I couldn't really escape it even if I wanted to.
Fact, sure.
It was a good song though. I liked it. And this is exactly what I personally predicted when he signed with Scooter. Because obviously you could see that LAROI was, of course, headed in that pop direction. He had records like Without You and then So Done. Those were two songs that opened up that lane for him. And then Stay just slammed the door behind him and, you know, locked it and threw away the keys, right? So he was most definitely in that pop lane from that point. So he wasn't just dabbling in pop, he was fully there. He was committed to that. And he had left behind a rap lane that first embraced him and officially crossed over into pop stardom.
He did the old Post Malone. Took his playbook, bar from bar, word from word, skill by skill.
The flip side, while LAROI was winning globally, his presence in the hip-hop culture in the rap world started to fade. The same fans who once championed him as Juice WRLD's little brother no longer looked at him as part of the rap conversation. And around this time is when LAROI started receiving a lot of hate, mainly from the rap community. Aside from the industry plant accusations, he was also on the receiving end of the culture vulture label that we've seen a lot of white artists get once they come up through hip-hop and then transition out of it. Nowadays we call it the Post Malone formula, right? Because
Dog, this nigga is taking, like, we hear it mentally, like we're there in
great example of this. He caught the same criticism early on with White Iverson. That's how most people found Post Malone.
Literally.
And then before he cemented himself as a global act, he had the image of a rapper. He kind of had the sauce of a rapper and the style of a rapper, right? His music was influenced by hip-hop and rap in general, right? And then he pivoted from that. With that being said, LAROI became the type of...
When do you see Post Malone buy a basketball hoop these days? You know?
Who could dominate mainstream charts, but no longer had that same core credibility in rap. So from that perspective, LAROI faded away, and at a certain point, a lot of rap fans simply stopped paying attention to him. Now, although the rap community stopped paying attention to LAROI a while ago, ever since his departure from rap, LAROI has actually made a massive mark in the pop world. It was really after Stay that things went to a whole new level. That record alone did billions of streams and cemented him as a young global superstar. But even outside of Stay, he stacked multiple other hits that kept his momentum alive. And for all the monthly listeners, fanatics out there, I mean, he's actually sitting at over 40 million today, which is insane, right? And that...
I don't know who listen to Kid LAROI these days, but hey, keep doing it. That is crazy.
Him in the 90 most streamed artists in the world right now on Spotify. Crazy. And then when you bring concerts into the conversation, that's where it gets even more real, because streams can be debated, playlists can inflate numbers, but you can't fake people showing up. And LAROI actually sold out nearly 30,000 fans in his hometown of Sydney last year, which I was very surprised to hear this. I'll be honest with you. I knew that he was successful, but I didn't know he could do 30,000. That's a lot, man. That's literally a stadium crowd. Like, that's insane to me, because I did not know he had that kind of pull. I think it's interesting to see how someone who was once considered Juice WRLD's protege is now standing fully on his own. He went from being introduced as Juice WRLD's little brother to becoming one of the biggest young pop stars in the world, right? And while hip-hop may have stopped checking for him, the numbers don't really lie. It looks like the Kid LAROI ended up finding his lane, and he's thriving in it. And although I'm not the biggest fan of his music, I like a few of his songs. You gotta salute the work. You gotta salute the success. Because there was a lot of rappers in that lane who blew up around that time, and then they didn't really do anything with it. This guy actually took that momentum and found a lot of success, and I think that's
very successful. Even though I can't name no new songs, he did very well. You know what I'm saying? That's what he's supposed to do.
Especially at such a young age. I think a lot of artists, when they blow up at a certain age, let's say if they're 17, 16, a lot of times they don't really find their way in the end, and that's a harsh reality for a lot of artists who blow up young, especially if they're getting a lot of criticism early on. It kind of throws them off balance, right? And it takes a lot for an artist to end up thriving in their own lane and finding their own identity, especially when you're young. I'm very curious what you guys...
Hey, man, that's honestly crazy. Now, would you consider the Kid LAROI as a culture vulture? Me, personally, I'm definitely considering him as a culture vulture. But let me know what y'all think down in the comments down below. Y'all might think different. Y'all might think the same. And I'm going to catch you niggas in the next one. Yes, sir.